Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Wood Home. First of all, I want to apologize if you hear any interesting background noises. I'm recording this in my dining room next to the kitchen, and I have the dishwasher on, which I didn't really plan very well since you might pick up on that. Also, if you hear any dog noises, that's because we've got some little critter visitors in our living room, or not in our living room, outside the living room window at the bird feeders, and my dog has been very excited watching that and making some little squeals and funny noises, so hopefully that doesn't get picked up on the microphone. Anyways, let's get into this video about Proverbs 31 verse 19. So this one is a short verse, but also kind of confusing. This verse says, "She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle." I encourage you to do your own research about what a distaff and spindle are because it's quite fascinating, but I'll give you sort of a simplified explanation and explain why it's relevant to this verse. So a distaff and spindle are used for spinning raw fibers, such as wool or flax, into a finished thread that can be used for weaving. The raw materials are wrapped around the distaff, and when they are spun, they're stored on the spindle. On the screen now is an image I found online illustrating their use. There's different ways to go about spinning using these tools. To show you this image because it illustrates the woman using both of her hands instead of just one. It is possible to do this process just with one hand, but you'll see why the two-hand thing is important later. Earlier in this study, I talked about wool and flax, and they're both used to make clothing. We read about the Proverbs 31 woman taking her time to diligently search for the appropriate materials that she needs. In verse 13, it says she works with her hands in delight. Maybe now in verse 19, she's taking the time to spin those raw fibers into usable thread, and she's doing so with a cheerful heart. We have to remember that Proverbs 31 is written as advice from a mother to her son. So why would a future queen, the wife of King Lemuel, need to know how to make her own clothing? Surely she would have the finest weavers and garment makers at her disposal, right? Well, maybe this is meant to show us that a worthy woman is humble, hardworking, willing to do things she doesn't really have to, and diligent. Those all sound like traits that we can embrace as modern-day women. But if God wanted us to simply glean those things from this passage, why the reference to spinning? Let's take a look at Exodus 35, verses 25 to 26, which reads, "All the skilled women spun with their hands, and brought what they had spun, in blue and purple and scarlet material, and in fine linen. All the women whose hearts stirred with a skill spun this goat's hair." When the tabernacle was being built, people contributed how they could. Some provided and worked with wood, others used various metals or stone, and so on. From reading the earlier verses in this chapter, it appears to me that people of wealth or higher class brought costly goods because that is what they had to give. And then the working people contributed labor or whatever skills they had. So the women doing the spinning were regular women, not really of noble class or anything like that, but clearly it was an important task. I find all of that interesting, but it still doesn't really answer the question of why the Proverbs 31 woman, who is the ideal wife for a king, would need to be skilled in spinning. It seems like a commoner task. Let's look back to the image I shared showing how a distaff and spindle are used, and then up to the verse image, which clearly states that she uses her hands, both hands, not just one. Using these tools in this way means the user is not idly sitting around, being lazy or unproductive. If we read further in verse 27 of Proverbs 31, we see that this woman doesn't eat the bread of idleness. She looks for ways to use her time well, so perhaps that is what we can learn from verse 19. Spinning is a skill that took time to master, and was a very useful one to have. A woman who could spin showed that she had dedication, was willing to work hard, and was open to learning new tasks. In biblical days, there were no toilets to scrub, socks to match, schedules to coordinate, homeschool curriculum to be planned, sports practices to rush to, but this verse is teaching us that wives should be domestically skilled in whatever tasks are appropriate for their family. To summarize, here's what we can take away from this verse. Firstly, we should strive to be diligent in our tasks, willing to work hard, and open to learning new skills that can help provide for the needs of our family. Second, homemaking is not something we are all automatically good at. It can take practice to master the skills we need, for example, cooking, ironing, meal planning, budgeting, etc. Third, idleness should not be a goal of ours. There is a difference between resting and being idle. For example, reading a wholesome book is not idleness, but hours of mindless internet scrolling is. That's all I wanted to talk about in this video for verse 19. I hope that you are enjoying this series. If you haven't checked out the previous videos, I do suggest you do so. I will link the playlist at the end of this video. I've noticed YouTube is having trouble showing the end screen with the subscribe icon and the recommended video, so I apologize if you are not seeing those, but I'll also link the playlist for the Proverbs 31 series in the description of this video. I just want to remind everyone that I'm not a biblical scholar, and I don't claim to be. This series is simply my thoughts on what I've learned as I dug deeper into Proverbs 31. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Feel free to comment or give it a like, and if you like what you see, I hope that you subscribe. One final note, a fun little fact about spinning. Women who spun used to be called spinsters, and it wasn't a cruel or mocking term like it kind of is now. It was similar to saying a bricklayer, tailor, sawyer, etc. I thought that was a fun little tidbit that I wanted to share with you. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.